Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're well. You're amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. This is video 2. That's it. 2 of 2. The videos that I was going to be doing today will now be tomorrow, which are just the shorter version of the live that I did yesterday, last night, early hours of this morning, whenever. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Now, in this video, I'm just going to... We touched earlier on today on the purchase of the K-bar knife, the sheath, the sharpener, seemingly by Bryan Kohberger. As shown in the documents, there are some issues with it. By issues, I mean it's not definitive proof of purchase, even though it would seem that they do have it, and it seems to depend upon a witness corroborating some of that activity as well, which I'm going to go through that because that's what this video is about. You're looking absolutely amazing, by the way. But let's get into this because we're going to touch on this and what I think of it. And if you've seen the thumbnail, you've probably guessed by now. But it's this statement here, right, which was the footnote of the Amazon click activity document. So it says the defendant touches on the issue of identifying the account user making Amazon search inquiries as shown by the click activity. Defendant's motion at page 4. The state recognised that the identity of the user making the inquiries is relevant, and the state intends to rely not only on the click activity but also other circumstances to connect the defendant to the original knife purchase and subsequent search inquiries for replacement knife and or sheath. This will include the defendant's financial activities, the click activities vis-a-vis other events such as the homicides or related purchase activity connected only to the defendant, and activity or testimony, from witnesses with knowledge that the defendant purchased a K-bar knife. So this says witnesses. I think I said witness in the original video, but it's saying witness. And why is this important, right? And what am I getting at with this? So let's just look at this a little bit closer. So what are they trying to say? They're basically saying that if you're on an account that multiple people have access to, how do you know who purchased what? Who do you know? So what we've got to take into consideration here is, so where was the computer or what account was being used? Was this a family account? And are the defence really saying that, well, it might not have been our client who did it. It might have been his mum, dad, or sisters who did it. And just keep a pin in that for a second. Because this is not a very good argument. It's quite a weak argument if they then, as they go on to saying this, but hold on, we can back up that with financial activities, such as if something's searched and then purchased, and then it goes through the defendant's bank account as a payment being made, for instance, and then they go to another computer that only he has access to, probably a laptop perhaps, and the laptop seemingly has similar searches, so on and so forth. But I got to this section here about a testimony from witnesses with knowledge that the defendant purchased a K-bar knife, and it led me to the shared computer. And I think this is referring to family. Remember, we've always believed that Bryan Kohberger was fingered by someone. And I don't mean the nice type of finger, and I mean fingered horribly. That's bizarre and all, fingered horribly. Don't think about that. Bit of blue, I know, but don't think about it. So I'm thinking about a shared computer. Who would that be? I'm thinking Bryan Kohberger's family. We're thinking he's getting fingered by someone. And I've always thought that it was his family. I've always thought that it was his sister. I always thought that Bryan Kohberger's sister had raised the issue. And originally I thought that's problematic because maybe she bared a grudge because he originally stole her phone and she never ever got over it. But we always felt that someone pointed the finger at Bryan Kohberger. The way that this case was seemingly reverse engineered, and I'm thinking to myself, how powerful would it be if Bryan Kohberger's own family had gone and said, we think that our son or brother did this crime. We know that there was Amazon activity on our account. We know that there was a knife search for, there was a knife sheath search for. And is this why Moscow Police Department went over to Bryan Kohberger's parents to obtain DNA? Was that actually under the how can I say, the permission, like other people have raised this question before. How would you get around pulling someone's DNA, like Dad's DNA, when he has no connection to the crime, and utilising that directly against Bryan Kohberger? Is there not some law that protects Bryan Kohberger's father from having his DNA utilised in this method? And I'm not saying there is, I'm asking the question. But because that would change if they had permission. Now, people have rightly questioned it as well. What are Bryan Kohberger's family doing? Have they supported Bryan Kohberger? What support have they offered? Because they haven't really come out and said anything whatsoever publicly. So on one hand, you've got to think they've probably done the best thing. They shouldn't really speak publicly. That would go wrong. But equally, nothing has been said. His mum had a social media community doing what she was doing around sort of home little things that she did. She come off of social media and scrapped that, and the rest is history. But no, I'm thinking that this footnote and what we're seeing in this documentation could likely be a nod towards that. Yeah, Bryan Kohberger did have his name given to them. And if this Dana Smithers stuff was also going on in the background, where Bryan Kohberger was potentially being considered for another crime, did this all cause a little bit of a melting pot within the family? And is this where the problems came? Did they start looking at everything that he was doing? Again, the ASD situation, because we look at it, we've got a similar situation in our family where we've got the two girls, the biological girls, and one of them is ASD, the other one isn't, and the one who isn't completely doesn't understand about the one that does. There's just so much friction there and a non-understanding, and the one who hasn't is the older one as well, so you would expect more understanding, but she's constantly in a mindset of sort of making excuses when I'm not going to get into that. That's for another video. What I'm saying is Bryan Kohberger's sister could absolutely have kicked him in the bollocks, metaphorically speaking, and probably not even gave a fuck about it. But there's a lot going on. I'd like to know what you guys think. I do believe that there is a high probability that Bryan Kohberger's family are the ones who were involved in likely putting together some of the stuff that we're seeing against Bryan Kohberger. How do I feel about what has come out? Now, don't get me wrong, I am absolutely 100% accepting that there is a purchase of a K-bar knife, sheath and sharpener, and seemingly a search for a replacement in the aftermath of these murders, which is massive. Does it mean that nothing else is relevant? I said this in the video earlier today. No, there are still things around this that doesn't make sense, and there is going to have to be answers to that. Obviously, we do still have Sahara in the mix, who is still doing his pro bono work to try and show that the state is lying about certain elements of this case. They're trying to hide certain things about this case. And there must be relevance there. There must be an importance there if Bryan Kohberger is not at the scene of this crime. And this is where you could get a massive issue here. And I'm going to talk about this separately, maybe in a live. And this could potentially be where this explodes. And that is about when this crime happened. Now, poor police work could fuck them over here. And if Bryan Kohberger, even if Bryan Kohberger is guilty, he could walk from this, because there could be things within that house that are being lied about and being manipulated to make this crime look like it took place at another time. And that could really hurt the case. What happens if Bryan Kohberger is proven to be away from this property at the time of the crime, that we've been told is the time of the crime because the people in the house, when in fact it didn't happen then? These are all things that we've got to think about. Is Bryan Kohberger guilty of this crime? I've got to say, at this moment in time, he has not been proven to be guilty of this crime. So in my mind, you still have to stick by he is innocent until he is proven guilty in a court of law by a jury of his peers. Did this hurt the case? I believe that if they can prove that he did absolutely buy one and look for a replacement, that is quite damning, especially if he then hasn't got the one that he originally purchased, unless he has a story of where it went, what happened to it, and can prove that, which that obviously then completely changes it. But as it stands at the moment, it's quite difficult to ignore it. You can't ignore it. And it is quite damaging. But you cannot ignore everything else, because this case has got a lot of complex moving things in it. We'll talk again tomorrow. Love you all. Oh.